from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your regular weekly intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Charu Sharma, once again in Bangalore. Thankfully, the rain's moved away a bit, so golf and tennis are back on the agenda. That's before I run away to the Saurashtra Premier League in Rajkot, which is going to follow this heavy-duty IPL action.
Hi, it's Jim Maxwell on the road here. I'm about an hour and a half from Melbourne at a place called Daylesford, very pretty spa town near the goldfields. And I'm actually in an old railway carriage that's been converted into accommodation. You can probably tell if you're watching the roof of the old carriage is it's still in pretty good nick. Anyway, it's a change of pace and a change of environment because it's cool. It's winter outside. It's about 8 degrees.
And I'm Alex Hartley. I wish I could say I was here in sunny Manchester, but I'm not. Obviously, it's raining, but it wasn't at the weekend when I was playing for the Thunder in the Charlotte Edwards Cup, and I'll be joining Welsh Fire in the 100.
Alex, I feel sorry about the weather, but great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, let's move on to the first thing on Stumped this week. It's crunch time in the Indian Premier League, and what a campaign it has been, from the fabulous achievement, the orange cap achievements of Jos Buttler, who can do no wrong, to the ducks of Virat Kohli, who luckily for RCB is sort of redeeming himself these days. From the pace of Umran Malik at 157, what a discovery, to the spin of Yuzvendra Chahal, who now wears the purple cap. It's been a fabulous 2022 edition, and it has certainly not disappointed. Let's pick out some of the highs and lows of people watching around the world. Now, I know, Jim, it is rather late in Australia. You're not particularly fond of T20 yet. What's caught your eye?
Well, the thing that's caught my eye is the recurring fickleness of the T20 game. The fact that the new teams in this IPL have replaced the old strong teams that normally do well. So that must say something about the quality of the players, obviously. But for me, T20, for all its enjoyment and its entertainment, is without doubt the ficklest form of the game. So upset's always on the cards.
You know, in India, of course, it's still there's a lot of controversy, a lot of chatter about the IPL. People seem to be watching in very large numbers, except there is a minor controversy about the ratings, which seem to have dipped. Now, it is an expanded campaign, so there are more matches and more time taken for the IPL, but I just wonder if there's a sort of a googly there in terms of the rating agencies, because I believe that the mechanism or the metrics is slightly different. However, that's been a bit of a dampener because some new media rights are coming up for the next 5 years, and if there's a reduction in the ratings, then that could be a bit of trouble. But the action, I must say, has been fantastic, and particularly so because of the relative success of the two new franchises, which does lend some thought to the fact that all the players are professionals. It doesn't really matter which team they play in. But Jim and then Alex, what is your thought about the fact that two new franchises can walk into what is a very strong league and do better than anyone else, Jim?
Well, it must come down to the organisation and the quality of the players, and the fact that the IPL can expand without reducing the quality of its overall output says something about the depth of players, certainly in India, and maybe there are a couple of old hands that could be shuffled around as we go into this format again next year. But it's very refreshing, obviously, and let's hope that it can be sustained. I mean, I'm not sure out of all of this, are we seeing the demise of one or two teams as a result, or is the competition healthy across the board and all these teams will be around again next year?
Well, I think it's a very temporary demise, if at all, or just a sort of a shift to the back room for Chennai and Mumbai. But I'm sure they'll be back strong because, after all, there's a fair amount of equality in the way that players are distributed. But Alex, you're no stranger to franchise cricket. So let me ask you the same question differently, though. Does it matter which franchise you play for? Does it matter in terms of performance? Or you say, well, regardless of who I'm playing with, I'm a professional. I'm going to go and do my job anyway.
I think some players will have some loyalty to teams, and I think some players in the IPL would have been disappointed had they have not been picked up by their original team. I mean, can you imagine DJ Bravo not in a CSK shirt? I don't think he would have been very happy had he not been there. But I guess the more franchise cricket we see around the world and the more franchise cricket these players play, when they join a new team and they get picked up by the Lucknow Super Giants, they have nothing to lose. They have to gel as a team straight away, and they have to just go out there and kind of show off. They have that freedom to show off. And I guess it's worked for these two new teams that have come into the IPL because they've played some fantastic cricket.
Well, just going on to one of the new teams who are already in the final. We're waiting for the big one this weekend. Hardik Pandya seems to have taken to captaincy like duck to water, has done very well individually as well, leading from the front for Gujarat Titans, who've, of course, won most of the matches in the league stage and are already in the finals, being a new team. Jim, that's just, I mean, on the face of it, a phenomenal achievement.
It is, and I hope this can be sustained at the end of the season, but it just shows something about the quality, as I mentioned before, particularly of the local players, that they can manage to do something as strong as this. I was interested in your remarks about television and ratings. Are you saying that the ratings have suffered as a result of the expansion? How's that working out in terms of television audience? Because it's not going to survive without the big television audience that it's built up since its inception, is it?
Well, not just television, of course. These days, Jim, there's a lot of digital viewership as well, something that I'm not particularly familiar with. So I suppose there are different angles of viewership coming in all the time. But there has been a fair amount of news in India. I wonder if it's floated down to Australia or to England about the fact that the ratings have dropped fairly percentage-wise, significantly at 30%, which is massive. But I also believe, or I'm privy to some kind of information from the ratings agency, that they have they've changed the metrics. They've taken away some of the free-to-air viewership that was also a part of the total viewership. So it's a little more complicated rather than just looking at the face of it. But it will worry, potentially, the IPL authorities or the BCCI authorities because this new media rights is coming up and they're asking for twice as much as the previous one for the next 5 years, which is a massive amount of money. So this news about the ratings is not going to be taken very favorably at all. But yet, wherever you go, of course, cricket's such a big juggernaut in India. Everyone's always talking about it. And still, it seems to me, easily the biggest, most powerful sporting property in our part of the world.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on ABC and All India Radio.
Well, next, or should I say finally on Stumped. It's a busy time for women's cricket at the moment. We've had the Fabric Invitational Tournament, which I saw a fair amount of, happening out in the Gulf, which was fantastic for players from other parts of the world who don't normally play cricket or a lot of cricket. And we've got the second season of the 100 to look forward to in the next few weeks. And, of course, the first ever appearance of cricket at the Commonwealth Games coming up. That should be pretty big. And at the time of recording, of course, the Women's T20 Challenge is ongoing. But will it be the last year ever? Because there is a lingering suggestion of an inaugural women's IPL next year. We've been talking about the women's IPL potentially for the next, last 4 or 5 years here on Stump, but it may actually happen now. And when we spoke to Australia's Alyssa Healy earlier this year, here's what she had to say about the prospect.
From what I've read, it seems to be on the cards for next year, but I think it's naturally, the next step. I mean, India, especially in the women's game, is such an untapped market. I mean, you look at that Indian side at the moment and I'd be terrified to think how good they're going to be in 10 years' time if, they get the opportunity to experience a lot of cricket in different places. And that includes in their domestic setup, having other international players come in and play in a women's IPL is only going to strengthen the Indian game. So, yeah, I think it's just a really exciting thing. And it's not about the money. It's never anything to do with that. It's simply the opportunity for young girls to get a taste of technically international cricket. I mean, you come to the WBBL and you're playing against, some of the best international players in the world. And what that's done for our domestic players is amazing. And I see the same opportunity in a women's IPL situation that, these young Indian superstars get the opportunity to play alongside some of the best players in the world and learn from them, learn how to win, learn how to play the game. And it's only going to do wonders for Indian cricket. So hopefully that's the next step. I mean, there's lots of talk of lots of little leagues popping up around the world, which is an amazing opportunity for a lot of us to hopefully get the opportunity to go and play. But the Indian one would be really cool to be a part of.
When Alyssa Healy speaks, the world listens. Alex, she predicts big things for Indian women's cricket. Should the women's IPL take off? Your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've been saying it for what seems like a few years now. I think this is the third edition of the Challenger Cup, and every single year, as females and cricketers, we're quite disappointed that it's only 2 teams, because we've seen how successful franchise cricket can be in the women's game with the 100, the KSL, the Big Bash out in Australia, and we're just dying for a women's IPL because we know what it will also do for India women's cricket. It's actually scary. The talent that India have in the women's game in their international side and what they could have in their domestic side. Smriti Mandana has come out and said, I'm not the best. I'm not the best opening batter that we've got in India. We just haven't found another one yet. And with a women's IPL, we'd probably find that within the first year.
And Alex, would you be happy to play in it? We say it's not about the money. Regardless, you'd be happy to. And how many teams do you think there should be to begin with?
Yeah, the team question's a great question, because I genuinely don't think it should be 10 like the men. That's a lot of teams. Maybe if we could start with 6 and go from there. So the first year you have 6 teams, or could you have 8 teams? Who knows? I think 10's too many, but I think 3 is not enough. It's really not enough. I'd love to play in the women's IPL. Quite often, most of my following is from India, and they're always saying, why are you not here? Why are you not coming over here? I don't think I'm good enough, so if I can't play, I'll commentate.
Oh, Alex, please, let me make a note of this. Okay, you're in. But this 3-team thing, just to give my views, it has been a sort of a force feed, just fitted in because there was a clamor to make sure that something was done for the women. It's certainly, it's suboptimal for sure. I do feel over the years, we've been talking about this in Stumped as well, that the women's IPL has not happened yet because the authorities in India, perhaps for good reason, feel that the depth is not there yet. So it's a chicken and egg. Do you do the women's IPL and then get more people following, more women playing the game, or do we wait for more women to reach a certain standard where the potential cynicism of the standards that we see in the women's IPL is not too low, because we need people to flood in and say, wow, like it's a spectacular thing and what a discovery it's been, rather than, well, some matches were really poor, so on and so forth. So that's what's held the authorities back, according to me. But Jim, is there room for a women's IPL right now? Because there is a fair amount of women's cricket already happening, and yet, of course, most women, I think Alex would agree, would say that there are not enough tournaments, not enough competition around the world around the year.
Well, there probably aren't, and there'll be some commercial reality that comes with the expansion of the women's game. I mean, we've already seen the women's BBL in Australia have enormous success. So I can't understand why, if you're going to have overseas players playing in the women's IPL, you can't have a few more teams. For me, India have been far too slow in trying to get this going, but I'm sure commercially it'll work.
Alex, do you feel that commercially women's cricket is picking up rapidly, not only number of matches around the world, but the sponsorship support, the commercial support? Do you think it's rushing in?
Yeah, I do. I think you only have to look at the WBBL and the domestic setup that we've got here in England, where teams have got their own sponsors now, because quite often we jumped on the back of men's teams and they'd say, right, okay, this is a sponsor for the men's team and we'll do the women as well. But now we've got individual sponsors. Commercially, there are people there. I played a Thunder game last week and 45,000 people were watching on the live stream. Now, if that doesn't tell me that people are interested, I don't know what will. There's a kind of consensus around women's cricket in the world that the BCCI are waiting for India to win a world tournament before starting an IPL, and that's our thoughts as players. But we often talk about you can't just win a world tournament without having a really good domestic structure as well, because the players aren't going to get better and better without playing regular competitive cricket. And it's one of those things, we want it to happen and it's just waiting for the authorities to catch up.
Well, I hope you're wrong there, because if they were waiting for only the World Cup win, it could come next year, it could come in 20 years, and you can't wait that long now, can we? I mean, God forbid it takes 20 years. But Jim, this is all white ball stuff. But what about red ball cricket for women? Because should there continue to be a big thrust on that, or should we just let that sort of find its own journey and focus on the development of white ball cricket globally?
Well, it'd be good to have both, and it'd be good to have New Zealand wanting to play red ball cricket again too. There's got to be a bit of leadership in terms of that from a number of countries. There's got to be some commitment. But Alex mentioned the domestic structure, and some of these teams don't have the depth to do that, I suppose. But white ball cricket's certainly, in terms of the commerce of the game, is going to be the front runner. and hopefully Test cricket isn't buried in the schedule as a result. But I think we can do both, but it might be a stretch the more and more these IPL and T20 leagues start spreading around the world to find a way to schedule the matches. But let's try and get some balance if we can. Yeah.
Now, in the men's game, of course, there's a huge background to it all. But do you think the women, cricketers, internationals, are ready to not focus so much on red ball cricket, just following the men saying, well, that's the real cricket, and instead be happy with focusing on white ball cricket as the way forward for development?
I think players want to play more red ball cricket, and I think you should listen to players as a governing body. Yes, maybe we're not quite ready for a 5-match test match series, but every single international cricketer wants to play the multi-format series that England and Australia play, where you play 1 test match, 3 ODIs and 3 T20s. Now the question then becomes, okay, well the multi-format series is special because it's played in the Ashes. So how do you then make the Ashes different to every other series that women play? Can you make the Ashes a 2-match test match series without, and then everyone else plays 1 match? So then it's different again. So it's forever changing, but players want to play more red ball cricket, but I don't think it's quite ready at the domestic level yet.
Well, shame, because, I mean, if you had to take the game forward, it might just be white ball cricket. Try growing the game internationally in various countries. You mentioned Thailand, while trying to push red ball cricket. It's not a very likely proposition. We'll see. But that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped on All India Radio. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at BBC WS Sport. And, of course, use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to BBC World Service YouTube. My thanks particularly to Alex Hartley. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex, this week. And Jim Maxwell. And to all of you for listening. Speak to you next week. For now, goodbye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.